I'm always interested when expressly political people or commentaries talk about movies. It's like watching two fandoms cross over almost, in kind of a weird way. Unfortunately though, it also usually ends in the most horrendous takes of all time. Taking praise of Shadows, for instance. Even though he's not an expressly political guy, there's nothing he can't not make political. He makes every movie he talks about political. It's just a case of when you have a guy who's so brain-rotted from politics that it makes him completely illiterate to media. And then kind of on the opposite of that spectrum is Ben Shapiro. He reviewed the Oscars movies and pretty much, for him had the most predictable takes you could have imagined he'd have. And although it's interesting to watch his takes on this, you still can't help but feel like he's more reviewing the movie's politics than he's actually reviewing the movie. And even then, I feel like a lot of times it's not that the movie even has politics, it's that he's attributing political motive to these movies sometimes. I didn't really want this to be a political video, it's not trying to be, but when you have a guy who basically just is so entrenched in politics and evaluates media that way, it's kind of hard to separate the two. And he's had good movie takes, I have seen him have good, interesting, insightful reviews of movies, but it's also pretty obvious to me that the second that there's certain subjects in a movie, he's pretty much completely checked out. I wouldn't be surprised if his irrational hate for the Batman came from that one cringy line that Catwoman says, 3 hours and totally ruined because of one line he doesn't like. Getting back to the substance though, I'm genuinely a little shocked by some of his take, but it's not too surprising to me that he wasn't going to be on board with this movie. And with other Oscar movies, like obviously he wasn't going to be on board with Anora pretty much exclusively because that movie is about a stripper. So just instantly, he's not gonna like it. And although I think The Substance is generally an apolitical movie, I think it's more about human nature and the business of Hollywood than it is politics. It's focused on women's issues and stuff, so I feel like that was always gonna kind of rub him the wrong way. And look, I'm no shill for Oscar movies. It seemed like 99% of the nominees for Best Picture were just boring, movies that I have no interest in, movies I've never heard of or cared to watch. I don't really care. Maybe I just don't have the highest barometer for, what I watch. I like horror movies. I like more mainstream stuff. And I don't know, these just don't seem like things that interest me. But I was obviously going to root for The Substance. And although the Oscars don't really mean anything to me personally, they just don't really hold any value to me, and I don't care. Even though I don't hold them in high regard, it's still cool to see a horror movie get this level of mainstream success and recognition. But of course, because it's an Oscar-nominated movie, I think that's also something that was going to pit Ben Shapiro against it automatically and make him not like it or just not give it a chance. And he starts the review by insinuating the only reason it got nominated was because Demi Moore gets naked, which... Does he not watch 80% of Hollywood movies? Famous people get naked all the time in movies, dude. This isn't a unique thing. It's not like this is something that uniquely happened in this movie. It happens all the time in Hollywood movies. Well, besides that, he says that the movie starts to peter out after an hour and 15, which, okay, so the movie peters out basically during the actual meat of them transforming back and forth. The actual meat of the movie is that stuff. The actual story and the scenes where she's taking away from her older self to sustain her younger self, basically taking away from tomorrow to satisfy her current wants and desires. That's the deepest stuff in the movie and the most important stuff. And it's weird because he almost seems to understand what the movie's about at times. He talks about how it goes for a story about how Hollywood treats aging stars, particularly, women. But then he kind of dismisses the notion that they are treated poorly or viewed differently. And he makes the mother of all takes. I'd say the less bad part of what he says is he thinks that the movie is blanketly saying that fulfillment is found for women through youth and beauty, so that's why she essentially goes back to relive her life and kind of relive her glory days, but the movie isn't necessarily about that. I really don't think that is saying that that's the optimal way to live, the way in which she does live. I kind of read into it more as the way that Demi Moore's character is treated in Hollywood makes her want to go back in time as she notices how she's treated differently and how just Hollywood uses you when you're the new shiny thing in town and then just kicks you to the curb when you're past your heyday. It's a bad business and it chews you up and spits you out, and I think that that's the core of the story. But even though his take with that was wrong, I think I still glean a little bit of what he's trying to say, but then he just completely loses the plot. He insists that she should have used her youthful counterpart to go back in time and get married and have kids. I'm genuinely kind of baffled by this take. Even his co-host makes a joke that this should be a Daily Wire exclusive. It's even hard to really dive into this take because it just makes no fucking sense to me. They really don't even particularly glorify the way that she lives when she is the younger version of herself. Like I said, it's more about highlighting the difference in how she's treated. It's trying to show that there's doors open to her when she's younger that aren't available or close out on her the older she gets. And it really is just completely throwing shade at Hollywood in general, I would say. And you'd think that he would be on board for that. But I think it's just the sensibilities of the movie just completely alienate him, and he's not able to just look at it through any sort of kind of not objective lens, but just he's not able to just watch the movie. I just really don't know what point it would have served if she started a family. It really just wouldn't make any sense. It's literally a tragic horror movie about Hollywood chews you up and spits you out. It is a tragedy, and it wouldn't have made any sense or even been the same movie if she decided to live the trad life, get married and have kids. It just wouldn't make sense. It would fundamentally not be the same movie anymore if they took that route. The message would be lost, it wouldn't have the same themes, and it would just be a really morally confused movie. I mean, it's no shock to me that Ben Shapiro's career as a screenwriter did not work out. But again, it's just very clear to me that it's his sensibilities being offended that make him just no longer able to actually evaluate the movie on its own merits. It's like his brain melts the second that a movie does something a little bit unsavory. And it's kind of crazy. This is just another example of that. It's just foul media literacy. And it feels like a complete misunderstanding of the movie in pretty much every way. I really don't know how he came to this conclusion. But it's still interesting to watch, even though it's horrendous sometimes. But those are just my thoughts on Ben Shapiro's review of The Substance. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. I'd be very curious to hear your reaction to this. I don't know. I think it's a pretty bad review. But let me know. I'm GM Light. Have a good one.